you know that I just got back from vacation. I was in Sedona, Arizona, and that's well known for spiritual phenomena. I may even found my own center there after I retired. That's part of the reason I went out there. But supposedly, you have UFO sightings, practically every night. I sign up for UFO tour. They give you night goggles. You can see the landing on the mesas, If there is anything, I presume it's probably some secret military thing going on. But they had to cancel the tour because of the weather, so I didn't get to see for myself. But a lot of people really believe this, and even a medicine man, I went on a Native American tour, a very well-respected guy, and he impressed me. He did a medicine wheel just next to the Amitabha Stupa. They have a Buddhist stupa there for the past 15 years or so. It was very impressive. And he said that he had his own alien encounter and all of this. So, not to mention that just last week, this past Sunday in the New York Times, in the Style 6 front page article about Alien Con, this big meeting, in Pasadena, 3,000 people filled an auditorium, partly in response to this show on TV called Ancient Aliens. You may have seen it. A number of people become famous, moderating this. So it's pretty striking. The amount of attention. There's another program coming on, I think tomorrow. In Search of, and it's all about aliens. There's a memorable sight gag at the beginning of one of the Men in Black movies. If you're familiar with that series with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith, it's about a government group that actually moderates and searches out aliens that are supposedly among us. It's basically a comedy thing. But at the beginning of I think the second movie, they're on the trail of this truck that's going through the desert that supposedly has aliens in it. And so they catch up with it and they open the back of the truck and it's Mexicans. Aliens, right? So what are we actually talking about when we mean aliens, and what should we have? What approach should we have to this? I thought it'd be good to look at what Webster says about aliens. The word alien, alienos in Latin, comes from alius, which means other. So keep that in mind. We're talking about aliens who don't know what's other. And you know what human beings, how they react to what's other. Allos is in Greek. You might know the dinosaur called Allosaurus. That shows they were getting tired of classifying because Allosaurus just means another lizard. Anyway, this is what the dictionary has to say about it. Alien. A, belonging or relating to another person, place, or thing. Strange. So, if something is alien, it's strange to us. Okay. B, relating, belonging, or owing allegiance to another country or government, foreign. As we get the Mexicans or whatever other country, right? Keep that in mind. 3, differing in nature or character, typically to the point of incompatibility. So it seems to be incompatible, synonym extrinsic. So that's what the dictionary has to say about it. Psychologists, Jung and others, I believe, and I've seen this in documentaries about extraterrestrials, they say, as a psychological phenomenon, whatever may be the case if they're actually existing, as a psychological phenomenon, what it often is a projection of our own fears and of what's strange in us, the shadow side of what we haven't investigated in our own being. So it's no accident, for example, as they point out that Roswell and all the big craze of the UFOs in the 1950s that I grew up with happened right after the war, when you had the Cold War and then the A-bomb scare and all of that, that we were projecting all our fears out, into outside of ourselves, and really what we were afraid of is ourselves. So the first thing we have to be aware of when we're sitting on our mat and we're pursuing our psychological and spiritual maturity is what's alien is, first of all, ourselves. What's strange, what can seem incompatible to our waking self, our approved self, our presentable self. That's what we first have to examine. The alien in us. There's a famous phrase of Joseph Campbell in The Power of Myth, when he's talking about going down deep into ourselves and into that cave where the dragon is, the dragon, this fearsome dragon that's really just ourselves, the Kundalini energy, if you want, the serpent within. He says we go down and we expect to find an abomination. And instead we find a God. Because it really is us, and it's that powerful energy, it's part of our true nature that we're trying to connect to, and whatever meditation tradition we're connected to. So we discover it's not that strange. It's strange only because we haven't made friends with it yet. We haven't met it yet. We haven't assimilated it yet. We haven't metabolized it. And it's certainly not incompatible. As Jung says, it's that shadow side of ourselves which is essential to us, however dark or fearsome it might at first seem. So that's a really important, first level of insight about, what's alien. That is, first of all, we're talking about ourselves and how we react to that. Now, if and to the extent that there are extraterrestrials, well, notice what we do almost right away. We're projecting our fears onto them. So usually if it's Independence Day or War of the Worlds, it's, they're really terrible, destructive, fearsome things, and really that's really just our projecting ourselves too. Because think about it. If they really do exist, well, how strange are they? What difference does it make? We're all connected scientifically, energetically. It's all just one universe. And as Zen reminds us, we're all connected. It's all connected. Even Christianity would say the same thing, that we're all one universe, one created. So we'd be meeting, not only our neighbors, we'd be meeting ourselves. Just Bernie Glassman, my teacher's teacher in Zen said, there is no other, talking about what's other. There is no such thing as the other, because it's all just us in our deeper connections and dimensions. And we shouldn't really be afraid of that. The other element here too, and this actually came up in the article about in Pasadena. He says, someone had begun to consider the non-physical realm. So not just aliens who are material beings, but the non-physical realm. Aliens as, quote, something completely ethereal. Beings of light. So we're not just talking about the highly evolved beings, that talk about in Conversations with God series, for example, but actually what we would call in our Judeo-Christian tradition, angels. Or they do it in Islam as well. So they were talking about angelic beings. Beings of pure light, beings of pure energy, spiritual beings. Whether we talk about, seraphim or cherubim and powers, principalities, dominions, and all those hierarchies, because actually, and I heard this in Sedona too, people were talking about, they identify some of these aliens as Elohim. And Elohim is just the Hebrew word for, first of all, for God, but also for angelic spirits. So if we're talking about aliens in that sense, well, we're already friends with them. They're already part of our tradition. And beings that we encounter in our sitting, in our meditation, in our contemplation. In the Buddhist sense, in the Buddhist realm, the Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, or Manjusri, or Samantabhadra, or all those spiritual forces which really wind up being, us, inseparable from us. levels of our own consciousness, levels of consciousness that we connect to. So on that level too, it's not so strange, and certainly not incompatible, with as, for example, it also mentions God's presence, our brains connecting to a universal intelligence, the way a smartphone links to Wi-Fi. Pure consciousness, just like Buddhists talk about. That's what we connect to. Buddha nature, Buddha mind, Christ consciousness, universal consciousness. Of course, exactly. Or, let's see, our moon may be a giant spacecraft where extraterrestrials monitor us. But listen to this. In this tradition, these traditions that I've been talking about, angels, a certain level of angels, the powers and the principalities, are in charge of planets. So there's an angelic intelligence, and the fathers of the church speak of this, behind or, with planets. And the great Muslim philosopher in the Middle Ages that Thomas Aquinas was debating with said that the one human intellect, there's just one human intelligence that we all share, and it's behind the moon. These were seriously proposed, So just to show that there is a connection, with energies and planets and all that stuff. It's interesting. But it's not that strange. Certainly not incompatible. But to go back to the Mexicans, this is where we really have to be careful. Because what we do and what we're doing in this country and what we're doing in the world now, if you look at various countries who are doing this, is they're projecting all their fears out onto the other, who are other races and other countries and other religions. And that's what we really have to be careful of, because none of that is alien or strange or incompatible. But we're just projecting all of that stuff out. René Girard, the great French philosopher who died recently, actually said this is actually the basis of most human cultures, We scapegoat. We find something, we define ourselves by who we're against and by who we're not, and by who we're fighting, and who we want to scapegoat as the source of all evil. And we're doing that again. And it's all part of that process of, being afraid of what's other, first of all, in ourselves, and then projecting it out. Being afraid of what's other because we don't know it's not other. There's no other. Love your neighbor as yourself because it is yourself. It's just you. You're not separate from anyone or anything. The Roman poet Terence, from the early, a couple hundred years before Christ, the dramatist, has a very famous phrase. And I'll quote it in Latin first because he uses the word. Nihil humanum alienum a me esse puto, which means I consider nothing human to be alien to me. Nothing human is alien to me, no matter what the race, etc. Look at what Jesus did all throughout his ministry, telling parables about the other who turned out to be the insightful one and the holy one, the Good Samaritan, for example. Or the 10 lepers, the only one who came back was the foreigner, the Samaritan, to give thanks to God. And the word that's in the Latin Vulgate translation says, has no one come back to give thanks to God except this alienigena, this foreign-born person, trying to shake us out of our complacency. Dogen, the founder of Buddhism, Zen Buddhism in Japan, those of you who are familiar with the history. This is actually on a painting, a watercolor by Roshi Kennedy, and the calligraphy with Amy Yee. I have it on my shelf at home. And I quoted it before. I said, Dogen says, it's 13th century, Dogen says, the true person is not in the individual in particular, but like the deep blue color of the limitless sky, everyone, everywhere in the world. So your true personhood, your true identity is like the vastness of the blue sky, everyone, everywhere in the world. That's who you are. That's the Buddha, that's the Christ, and that's you. To my mind, the most eloquent and obvious koan dealing with this truth is one of the early ones, the fourth one in the Mamonkan, which I'll look at with you. It's called "The Foreigner Has No Beard." You know, sometimes it's translated, the barbarian from the West. And notice, there's us and then there's the barbarians. Greek culture, the Greeks and everybody else was a barbarian. Or like the Jews and everybody else is Goy. Or, Christian and everybody else is non-Christian. It's always the tribe, it's always us that are the good ones and then those other people, the barbarians. Anyway, that's sometimes translated that way, the barbarian from the West. So the foreigner from the West. Who is it, by the way? Anybody know? Who is the foreigner from the West? Yeah, well, Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma was the one who traditionally, in 500 AD, more or less, brought Zen Buddhism from India to China. So this koan is about, so often when it says, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma is coming from the West, it's another way of saying, what is Buddhism, what is truth, So, the foreigner from the West. Now, if you've ever seen, pictures, drawings of Bodhidharma, he has this huge bushy beard. And he seems like a wild man. And you can see why that would have impressed the Chinese. The Chinese have practically no body hair. They can't grow a beard very well. Whereas, as you know, the Indians are very hairy. And so here comes Bodhidharma from India with this huge beard. And they say, wow, look at that. But that's not what this says. The koan is, why has the foreigner from the West no beard? So that's the koan. The whole point being that he has a big bushy beard. But why does the foreigner from the West have no beard? And that's your koan. Sakita, in his commentary, puts it very simply. Who's Bodhidharma and who are you? If you're everyone everywhere in the world, you're Bodhidharma. And Bodhidharma is you. So if you have no beard, neither does he. And if you do, well then he does too. That's just what Sakita points out. So the whole point being that, if you're Bodhidharma, well, these details are not what matter. Shibayama, in his commentary, always has some provocative phrases and some clever insights. So he says, are there such distinctions as big or small or this or that in the reality of the thing itself? Be the reality itself with a capital R. And if you're the capital R, reality itself, well then you have a beard, you don't have a beard, you're everybody everywhere in the world. If you really wake up to it. Be the beard itself, through and through. Be his beard. Everything is a hologram, The beard is the whole universe. That's exactly what he says next. At this moment, the whole universe is the beard. It's like the koan, which says the staff is the dragon, is the whole universe, mountains and streams and everything. Because everything is a hologram. Everything is everything. Modern science confirms this. But you have to experience it. It's not enough to know, oh, I'm Bodhidharma. You have to feel it, know it. You're everybody everywhere in the world. The whole universe is the beard, the whole universe is no beard. Doesn't matter what word you use. If he has the beard, just with it, just as it is, he has no beard. Because even with his beard, if he's just as it is, here and now, it's the whole universe, and therefore no beard. Or if he has no beard, he says, then just without it, as he is, he has it. He's connected with everyone who does have a beard. He's everyone and everything. Such a beard, he says, this is the true beard. The true beard that can even bind the whole universe. And that's beautiful. Because this is what connects us all. It binds the whole universe. Everything binds everything. Because everything is hologram. And everything is connected. Especially you to everyone and everything. And the final phrase that he has here is the whole point of the whole thing. The one who has this beard is the man of eternal peace. Because if there's no other, then there's nothing to be afraid of, and nobody to be afraid of, and nobody to exclude, and nobody to fight, and nobody to be against. You're everyone, everywhere in the world. And that's the source of peace. That's why Christ is our peace. That's why the Buddha is peace. Because it's connected to everyone, everywhere, in compassion and love. So who are you? What's alien to you? Who is alien to you? And why? What have you not connected with in yourself and in the world and around you? Nothing and nobody is strange. Nothing and nobody is incompatible. It's new